This presentation for lab number 5 was made by group number 1 in section 16 for Bio 155. So what exactly are invasive alien species? Species of these kinds are non-native to the environment which they are introduced to and can significantly threaten the natural ecosystem and native inhabitants. They are most commonly introduced because of humans through means of commerce, agriculture, and the pet trade. However, they can be introduced to new environments in more natural means, such as migration or being outcompeted in their native environments. Two of the many invasive alien species found here in the United States include the zebra mussel, which has been introduced to various bodies of water around America, most notably the Great Lakes, and the feral pig, which is a hybridization of European boars that have been introduced to Hawaii. Both of these species pose significant ecological threats to their respective non-native environments.
There are many negative consequences of invasive species, and one that stands out the most is the cost and overall effect on the economy. For example, Petchar says that the total cost of IAS in the USA range from $131 billion cumulative to $128 billion annually. In fact, a single species can cost millions of dollars due to the damage they have done in an environment or because they have stripped of resources needed in the country. These costs relate to provisioning, regulating, and cultural services. Provisioning services include food, fiber, fuel, timber, and water. One example is the salt cedar tree that consumes 1.4 to 3 billion cubic meters of water each year, costing the U.S. $26 to $67 million of water lost annually. Regulating services include climate mitigation, flood control, disease, pollination, etc. The golden apple snail has made negative effects on the water purification system in Asia and also feeds on young rice seedlings, resulting in rice farmers losing $425 to $1,200 million in the year 1990. Cultural services relate to tourism and recreation and more aesthetic appeals. For example, the red imported fire ant has cost billions of dollars for medical treatment from their stings.
There can be many negative effects of invasive species. In our article about invasive species, it talks about livestock and aquatic food production. The introduction of invasive alien species can do more harm than good. It can kill off non-invasive species and damage the habitat surrounding it. In California, the introduction of yellow star thistle, an invasive species, is unpalatable to cows and costs the U.S. nearly $8 million a year in lost livestock. At Lake Victoria, water hyacinth has reduced the production and quality of fish as well as damaged water supply intake. Invasive alien species can also become hybridized and very dangerous to the human population. One example of an invasive species hybridizing is a European honeybee hybridizing with the Africanized honeybee, making a sometimes deadly sting. Not only are they very dangerous to humans, but they can also disrupt mutualism with native bees.
Okay, so there are many benefits invasive species can bring to an ecosystem. The first can fall under provisioning services. IAS, such as wild boars in Hawaii, have become a staple in the diet of many of the communities there. And the woody plants in South Africa have provided the community a source of fuel and energy, as well as building materials. So, the second part of benefits can fall under regulating services. There is an invasive species of honeybee that has helped a vast amount of farmers pollinate their crops by reaching different areas that native honeybees wouldn't normally pollinate. And these honeybees have saved the USA over billions of dollars per year in pollination services. Water purification. IAS, such as the zebra mussels, filter out pollution and other impurities in water, producing cleaner water for an ecosystem. And climate regulation. There are some invasive species that are able to sequester or hold back the amount of CO2 that they emit into the atmosphere over the native species that were already there. And these IAS can help reduce climate change.
This is the synergies and trade-offs from invasive alien species. The woody plants in the figure on the left were in South Africa, giving supplies for making buildings and fuel wood. The woody plants led to 30% less water for the inhabitants in South Africa due to evapotranspiration, The plants also caused topsoil and runoff, and took over large areas of land quickly. The Working for Water program, which is seen in this image, had removed the woody plants. The zebra mussels, which can be seen on the right, were purposefully added as they are great filter feeders in water ecosystems. They, however, clog water intake pipes as seen in the image, costing the companies millions of dollars and bioaccumulate toxins which then go into fishes and other avian organisms. The mussels also cover beaches, ships, and more, and are very pungent. The feral pigs, as seen in this image, were found in Hawaii. The pigs are great religiously and culturally, and just being food. They eat a lot of food though, and the pigs, as shown in this image, also carve and eat the insides of tree ferns after knocking the tree down or uprooting plants. This leads to different mosquitoes and diseases affecting the population and the environment.
How to control invasive species, implemented control measures. The first step is to identify any damages being done and their effect on human well-being in general. This means that each invasive species' effects on the surrounding environment are evaluated. Then, it is important to determine the ecosystem service affected to properly address the situation with the correct control measure. An example of control measures being used can be seen in Florida with the paperbark tea tree plant overtaking the local mangrove populations. Although the benefits of this plant is an improvement with honey production, a deficit is that it hinders ecotourism profits. This means that the ecosystem service affected is provisioning. Possible control methods used could be relocation, removal, or enclosing the surrounding trees. How to control invasive species, methods, and alternatives. Invasive species prevention techniques include predicting, comparing, and assessing. The first step is to watch trends of other invasive species in other locations to predict if the current environment is invasible. The second step is to compare invasive species to existing inhabitants. When an invasive species is first introduced, begin research on its interactions with the native species. Possibilities for other control measures. Intensive studying and monitoring of invasive species includes closely studying the surrounding environment and inhabitants previously there and monitoring how they interact. Additionally, you can compare traits of invasive species to other invasive species to see if there's better ways to control them. Preventing invasive species from spreading means patrolling borders of states, cities, and countries more closely and monitoring foreign animals and insects being transported to prevent unwanted migration. Lastly, adaptation could be used opposed to termination. In conclusion, the take-home message is that invasive species have negative and positive impacts on several ecosystem services, but the impacts are still being discovered. Some future directions for IAS is to invest in education on the topic to increase concern and awareness. The importance of this topic is that invasive species are a danger to global environmental change, and the reason why we should care so much about it is because of their consequences toward biodiversity and human well-being, because all the parts of the ecosystem are connected in a way, so even minor changes can affect us in the long run.